Alright everybody, it is Sunday, July 6th. I have didn't check, should be 80 days to get the house done. And the current mission is to work on compost bin so that this coming week then I'll be freed up to work on doing plumbing. I need to start doing the plumbing. That is really the most important thing that I have to do. But I don't know, I'm in just kind of a quiet headspace, so I've got a little bit of a plant meditation to do, which I'll see if I can find any on this guy. My pine trees are getting attacked by this really weird fungus. I think it's a fungus. I don't know for sure. It could be the same mite that was attacking my other plants, and it just looks different when it attacks the pine tree. But what I'm going to be doing is coming in with forceps and removing all of the needles that have evidence of this parasite, whatever it is. I want to physically remove it from the tree so that hopefully I can kind of stop it in its tracks and ultimately keep these trees healthy. What happens after these guys, whatever this parasite is, kind of does its thing, the needles dry up and get brown and are clearly no longer photosynthesizing and fall off, and that's certainly not good for the tree. So this is kind of a classic Sven move here, where I look at something. There's a pretty good view of this, whatever this parasite is. The classic Sven move is to look at something like this task, where I'm going to go over every branch and every pine needle of a bunch of different pine trees on my property, and I feel like I just have the time and energy to do this. It seems like a doable task to me, and it's kind of a ridiculous task when you think about it, the sheer scale of it. But it reminds me of when I tackled the thistle issue at the Boulder Circus Center, and I hand pulled, I don't know, many tons of thistles, an acre or more of thistles, all by myself, all by hand, because I didn't want to use a bunch of poison to do it. And so often I assign myself these tasks that are just ridiculously impossible, but it aligns with my values and what I feel I'm capable of, so I do it, even though it doesn't entirely make sense. But I'm going to spend a little time on this, hopefully, if I can find a little time here and there, I can work with some of these different trees, get them deparasited. I'm going to burn the needles to destroy whatever this parasite or pathogen is. And we'll see if I can keep these trees healthy. One other thing I'll say about this, to me, this is evidence of a changing climate. When we see pathogens like this able to be more successful, in the past, I suspect that it was too cold here for these pathogens to be as successful as they are right now. But with weather getting warmer and milder here in the Rocky Mountains, fleas and ticks are going to be on the rise. We're going to have a lot more Lyme's disease and more weird parasites like this tackling trees, just like down in Colorado. We've got the pine bark beetle that has caused so much death to pine trees and makes the forests way more susceptible to wildfire because the trees are all dead and dried out. They're not lush and green, which would make them more impervious to wildfire. And so we've got these tinderbox forests just ready to explode in fire if anything gets started. And that, of course, puts human property and lives at risk, as well as all the wildlife. And just the overall survivability of our planet. So it's intense to be watching climate change happening right before our eyes and seeing the consequences of it. And who knows if me taking the time to try and hand eliminate parasites from my pine trees is going to make any difference at all. You know, all it would take is one lightning strike later in the summer, and this whole property potentially just goes up in a raging inferno, and I lose everything I've been working for the past 7-8 years since I bought this property. So, scary stuff. But at the very least, what I'm doing right now is a way to have a quiet meditation, connect with the plants on my property some, feel myself in harmony with the land, working with the land and the landscape and the plants, feeling connected to nature. So, you know, whether or not I can prevent this parasite from really establishing itself on my property, probably not. But can I make a little bit of a difference? Can I help these trees be a little bit healthier? And can I be more connected to my property? Yes, I can. So maybe it's worth it, even if it seems futile. Anyhow, that's what I'm up to for a while. After this, I'm going to have some lunch. I'm going to get my bike trailer ready, and I'm going to go get some pallets to build the compost bin that I want to build, because the pallets I have on hand here are just not... They've sat out in the weather too much. They're not very structurally sound right now, so they are not going to be a good option. And I did just see a bear in the neighborhood, and so I need to build a compost setup that is quite sturdy and will be hopefully impervious to all the different wildlife that's going to want to get into that compost bin and make a total mess, which, you know, I don't really mind my compost being raided if there's animals that can derive sustenance from it. But bears getting habituated to associating food with human habitation ultimately results in bears that come into conflict with humans. And whenever that happens, the bear loses. The bears get killed, and the humans go on doing whatever they did that resulted in that behavior. So we want to prevent that. You know, as they say, a fed bear is a dead bear. We'd rather have live bears out there playing their role in the ecosystem. Therefore, I need to have a robust compost system that will not be susceptible to getting raided by bears. All right, that's the scoop. Sunday, July 6th. We are up and running. Okay, so I'm making pretty good progress here on this tree. And I decided I want to set up the tripod so I could talk some while I do this. I just feel like this is such a perfect metaphor for what is going on in the world right now. Here I am with a freaking pair of tweezers pulling individual pine needles off a pine tree, hoping to somehow save this tree from the ravages of climate change. Meanwhile, my neighbor, who's a billionaire, and I'm not going to speak poorly about this neighbor. This neighbor has done a lot to conserve the landscape in this area. So I would say my neighbor is one of the best billionaires out there. I really think he's doing a lot of good in the world. But just his existence as a billionaire, buying up thousands and thousands of acres. I think he now owns about 10,000 acres in this valley. Owns many, many homes to house his many, many employees. Just that billionaire's daily existence is causing the climate crisis, right? The amount of energy it takes to heat a 20,000 square foot house, which is what I understand he has built for himself and his family. Think about the heating bill for a 20,000 square foot house. I pay about, I don't know, $49 a month, I think, is my energy access fee. And then, you know, my actual energy consumption that I use here in a uninhabited 500 square foot cabin that, it's not an inhabited cabin, so I'm not using full energy yet. But I consume about, I don't know, anywhere from 20 to sometimes only $5 a month in my actual energy use. Um, but my neighbor's heating a 20,000 square foot house. That's 40 times the size of my house. And he's flying around on a private jet, which uses enormous amounts of fossil fuel and also pumps that fossil fuel pollution directly into the atmosphere. And so here I am dealing with some sort of biological pathogen that is able to be more successful in attacking these trees due to temperatures being just a little bit warmer. Recent winters have been, noticeably warmer than they were here historically. So these pine trees that evolved in this area that did not evolve defenses against this pathogen are being attacked. And here I am with a pair of freaking tweezers trying to hold at bay the ravages of climate change while one neighbor in this valley is basically taking a nuclear bomb and setting it off. Like, that's the level of harm that he is causing just from his day-to-day lifestyle. And as I said, my billionaire neighbor is one of the good billionaires. He's actually doing a lot of good things in the world to preserve our environment and so forth. So let's say nothing about what is the effect of Jeff Bezos. I mean, how ironic that Jeff Bezos, who is hugely responsible for the climate crisis in the way that he has conducted his business, that just creating a business that depends on shipping goods all over the place instead of more efficient distribution of materials, which would be those materials go from a manufacturer to a retail store, and then I go to my retail store and pick those up. Instead, we've got every single thing needs to be individually shipped somewhere across the country in order to get delivered. And we've destroyed, through that business model and with Walmart creating a market that is all about the cheapest prices and manufactured goods coming from China, where we can exploit effectively slave labor in order to make things really cheaply, that those goods then are shipped halfway around the world so that we can consume them here, and they're made in factories that are not subject to the same sort of regulations that we have here in the United States, or at least had up until our current regime came into office and decided that all regulation is bad. They'd rather die with a fistful of dollars in their hands than live. Anyhow, it is the perfect metaphor for the climate crisis is what I'm doing right here. Me with a pair of tweezers trying to do something good in the world, try to keep life alive, while a handful of individuals with all the wealth in the world who actually could make an enormous difference. They could absolutely stop the climate crisis in its tracks if they invested their money in clean energy and in helping build the infrastructure for livable cities that don't require such long commute times and so forth. But that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is fueling the AI revolution by creating mega supercomputer plants where they're using millions of gallons of water a day to cool these supercomputers, and that water then becomes contaminated water. They're using gigawatts of energy to power all those computers. And why are they doing that? Are they doing that to make the world a better place? No. They're doing that so that these people who have billions of dollars can acquire billions more dollars. And those dollars come from the current and future suffering of the human race and all life on Earth, and possibly are going to create a full ecological collapse, which means that maybe we lose 50% of life on Earth. Maybe we lose 90% of life on Earth. Anyone who's watching this video, you and I are potentially going to go through a Mad Max type of reality where we literally have full ecological collapse, where trees like this aren't able to fight off the invasive species that are able to come into their habitats as a result of altered climate. And the cascade effect is that the food chains start to crumble. The basic web of life that supports all of us, that keeps all of us alive, that web of life completely crumbles, is torn asunder, and we are left with barren landscapes. We are left with water that is too poisonous to drink, and we are left with an inability to grow food because the land itself, the microorganisms that keep soil healthy, the soil itself is basically dead and or poisoned to the extent that we no longer get to grow food, or the climate is altered to the point where crops don't grow successfully, or we have massive weather catastrophes like the floods in Texas right now that end up destroying areas that could have been viable for growing food, but now those crops are just annihilated in a single storm that brings more water in a few hours than that region is accustomed to having in an entire year. So it just feels insane that I'm trying to stop climate change with a pair of tweezers while the billionaires are just taking a flamethrower and a tank of gasoline and stoking the fire of climate change, right? But what can I do? Can I sue them in court? Do I have the money to hire a team of lawyers that will actually be able to go up against a billionaire who can spend millions of dollars on lawyers? No, I don't. I can't stop the oil industry. I can't stop the AI industry from continuing to use insane amounts of energy and water to do the development of AI through all this supercomputing. And so it's just, another great example talking about water. I'm building a house here that I'm going to only consume a gallon to a couple gallons of water a day. And that's great. Like, I'm going to protect water as a resource, right? Meanwhile, just on the other side of the mountains here, I have visited many houses where they are using maybe 20, 30,000 gallons of water a day to water a landscape that didn't need water before they came along. What happens is they decide they want to build their house in this spot with a great view. The first thing they do is mow down all the plant life. The whole property gets scraped bare, so there's no plant life left. And that's very efficient for construction. It's very easy to get your construction done when you don't have to worry about protecting the trees or anything like that. The opposite is me doing my construction here, trying to leave every plant and tree intact that I possibly can. And it's taken me, more than 6 years now to not even complete the construction on a 500 square foot house. These guys come in, they eliminate all the plants, just scrape the land bare, and then build their 10,000 square foot mansion, and then install miles of plastic into the ground to move hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, sometimes tens of thousands of gallons of water a day, to water the landscape that they're trying to recreate, which if they just hadn't mowed it down in the first place, wouldn't need any supplemental water because they had an intact, functioning ecosystem before they came along and mowed it down to make their giant house. And so what I'm saying here is my effort to conserve water, me, only using a couple gallons of water a day, and they're using tens of thousands of gallons of water a day. So, I haven't actually done the math, but how long does it take, like if I'm only using a couple gallons of water a day instead of, the building code specifies that a house must be designed in such a way that for each resident in the house, each person who lives there, the house can handle processing 150 gallons of water per day per person. So as one person, let's say I am saving then 148 gallons of water a day, and multiply that times a year. Let's even say I'm only saving 100 gallons of water a day just to make the math simple. So I am in a year saving 30,000 gallons. So it takes me a year to save as much water as they are using in a few days, maybe a week, maybe only one day, some of them, where they've got these 100-gallon per minute sprinkler heads that are running 20 of them times 100 gallons a minute. I went to a property like this. 20 sprinkler heads, 100 gallons a minute. So that's 2,000 gallons a minute for 10 minutes. 20,000 gallons a day on a landscape that didn't need water before they messed it up. So in a year, I might save as much water as they're using in a day. So it takes me a year to counterbalance the waste of their water every day. So it just doesn't work out. Like I can't possibly save enough water to balance out the rate at which they are consuming water. It would only balance out if I was saving 100 gallons of water a day and they're using an extra 100 gallons of water a day, right? Then we would balance each other out and that would be fine. But I'm saving 100 gallons of water a day and they're wasting, 10,000, 20,000 gallons of water a day. So I can never catch up. And so that is the insanity of the crisis that we're in, is all of us good-intentioned people who just want to see life on Earth survive. It is completely impossible, given my resource allocation, given the amount of money that I have. There's absolutely nothing I can do in my own day-to-day actions with how I live my life, my lifestyle choices. There's nothing I can do to offset the harm that is being caused by the average billionaire. So it's insane. I feel like the classic fairy tale of the kid who sees the crack in the dam or the dike and knows that his village is going to get flooded, and so he sticks his finger in the crack, hoping to somehow hold back the floodwaters with his little boy finger. It's just not possible. So then, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I taking the time to interact with this tree in this way, to prune individual needles one at a time that have this disease in the hopes that I keep this one tree healthy? Well, one, it's a meditation. Two, it connects me to my landscape and it keeps me in relationship to the land, and it keeps me thinking about how I can live in harmony with my local land, my resource base, my plant community of which I am a part. This tree and I, we coexist on this property, and my well-being is greatly benefited by the well-being of this and every tree on the property. So the more that I can tend to these plants and keep them healthy and happy, the cleaner the air I get to breathe, the more wildlife I get to see, the more I get to function and live in an intact, functioning ecosystem, which has been part of my goal in building this property, is to keep this ecosystem intact, healthy, and functioning. Because I know that my very life depends on all life on Earth. If life on Earth ceases to exist, I cease to exist. And I don't mind if I die. That's not a big deal. My belief system is such that I'm not afraid of death. I know that I exist beyond the boundary of this physical body, that when this body expires, I will get to return to an existence as an infinite soul, an infinite being of light, which I remember experiencing before this incarnation in this physical body. So I'm not worried about dying. But I love this world. This world is so beautiful. We live in a Garden of Eden, just this little 2-acre property. The amount of incredible life and flowers, the sunsets I get to see, the creek I get to go interact with. I could spend the rest of my life just on this 2-acre parcel and be happy as a clam, be overjoyed every day with the beauty of nature that I get to witness and interact with. We had just earlier this morning, a bear was in the meadow on the other side of the fence from my property, cruising around. Like, how cool! I don't have to go to a national park to see a bear foraging for food. I've got it right here in my neighborhood. That is amazing. There's wonder and awe and joy to be experienced just in taking the time to just absorb, to be nourished by the profound beauty of the natural world. So it doesn't matter if I die or not, but it matters a lot to me if life on Earth becomes the sort of drudgery that has been portrayed in all sorts of apocalyptic movies. That is a hellscape. Right now, we have heaven on Earth. What we're headed towards very quickly is hell on Earth, where we as people are struggling to just have clean drinking water and edible food on a daily basis. It is absolutely insane that people who have billions of dollars look around the world and they don't say to themselves, wow, how can I make the world a better place? And obviously with notable exceptions like my neighbor or like Mackenzie Scott, who are actually giving away money to try and make the world a better place. But the majority of billionaires don't seem to think that way. It seems that they go, wow, what an amazing world. How can I consume more of it? How can I basically ingest more of it in my lifestyle and result in greater destruction? But somehow, what does that do for them? I don't know. Makes them feel valid, makes them feel worthy as human beings. If they have enough money, it means that their life is not meaningless drudgery, working on things that have no intrinsic value so that they can collect wealth that has no intrinsic value. Life is intrinsically valuable. Well-being has value. The beauty of the natural world, that has intrinsic value because when I witness it, it directly creates an effect in my body of thriving health and nourishing well-being. But money, dollar bills are a symbol that have no intrinsic value. And yet, our world, life itself, is being destroyed so that people can look at their bank account and clap themselves, give themselves a big round of applause, slap themselves on the back because they've done such a good job winning the game of life. They've got all these numbers in this digital computer account that doesn't even really exist in any real sense. It only exists in virtual reality inside the computer. But good job. You've got a lot of numbers there, a lot of digits in a row that say that you did something worthwhile. So who is more insane? Am I more insane for taking an hour to try and make this tree more healthy? And when I walk by this tree every day, I feel good because I see the tree is thriving? Or is the billionaire more insane because they look out at the world and say, how can I have greater control over this place? How can I exert more influence over other people's lives? How can I be the demigod who decides who lives and who dies? Yeah, obviously it's clear what I think is insane. I think it's insane to worship a symbol while watching life perish all around you. Absolutely insane. So, anyhow, that's my little diatribe for the day. I'm going to have to post this as its own separate episode because it's going to be super long. It's probably 15 minutes I've been talking here about the insanity of, you know, what's going on with climate change and the destruction of our natural world so that a few people can have even more money that they could never possibly spend in 1,000 lifetimes. Um, yeah, I feel like there's one other point that I wanted to make, and what would that be? Wealth, intrinsic value, connection to nature. Just gonna sit for a second and see if the one other thought comes through that I wanted to share. I mean, one other thing that I think about all the time is, if these billionaires truly get their way and cause destruction to life on Earth, if we have a full ecological collapse, they're not going to survive unless they get a spaceship going to Mars real soon. Doesn't matter how great their, World War or Cold War era bunker is that they have built a shelter in. Doesn't matter if they own a private island or have a 300-foot yacht that they can live in. At a certain point, there's just no food to eat and no water to drink, and we could hit that point in our lifetime. We're not talking about some distant future here where it's the billionaires' grandchildren that are going to suffering. We're talking about our lifetime. This is happening. We either make it or break it in our lifetime. We either save our skins, save our lives from our own folly of greed and disconnection, or we all perish, or at least 90% of us perish, in the next 50 years. And if some of us do survive, it will be a hellish existence. I mean, I want you to think about what ecological collapse really means. It means that you don't have air conditioning anymore because the system has completely broken down. It means that when you go to the bathroom, you may have to wipe your butt with your bare hand because toilet paper doesn't exist anymore. Does that sound fun? No, it's a horrible existence. It means that everywhere you go, you've got to be worried that some stranger with a gun is going to kill you and either eat you or just rob you, your house, maybe break into your house and rob what little bit of food you've got. Because that kind of world is a world where two things will happen. One, there will be communities of kindness and caring where people take care of each other and create farms and figure out how to eke out a meager existence. And then there will be the people who are just savage. People who are willing to kill their own grandmother in order to live, or who will eat their own child when there's no food left to eat. Those people exist. Right now, they are maybe criminals or who knows what. They just have no morals. I mean, I would argue that the billionaire class functions that way. They're literally consuming the whole world while the rest of us suffer the consequences. Um, Anyhow, so those people exist, and they're going to come around, and it's not going to be survival of the fittest or the smartest. It's going to be the survival of the most cruel, survival of whoever is willing to be most vicious, most aggressive, most violent. And that's not going to be a fun world to live in. It's going to suck. Right now, we've got a glorious world to live in. However bad anyone's life is in this planet is freaking amazing. We have this stunning, gorgeous world that nourishes every need of our body and soul, and we are rapidly creating a world that will not be able to sustain us, much less nourish us. So yeah, insanity all around, and we'll see. In a science perspective, one of the things I worry about, I don't know what these different organisms are. I've just noticed in the past couple years more and more disease in the plants on this property. And again, I attribute that to the fact that the winters are milder now, and so parasitic organisms that barely survived before and maybe just caused a little bit of damage before are now able to thrive because they don't get killed off in the long, hard winter of this mountain climate. What I don't know here, I mean, it's interesting, I don't know if the camera's at all picking this up, but the reason I think that this organism is a fungus is because I see little spore-like stuff coming out of these little growths. And one of the things that's so challenging is I don't know, is this organism already completely throughout the entire vascular system of this tree? Is what I'm doing totally and completely futile because it's an infection that basically the only way to kill is to kill the tree? Are these little spore-like things I'm seeing, are they actually spores? And so sometimes when I break off a needle, is it, scattering those spores and just spreading them and helping this disease to spread? I don't know, because I don't know what I'm dealing with here. All I know is that these things grow out of the needles, and then the needles die, and I know that's going to make this plant less healthy. So I'm doing my best to slow down this parasitic organism, but I also wonder if, as I walk around the property and as I'm brushing these plants, am I just spreading more of these organisms? Like, they get onto my clothes, and then I brush up against another plant, and I've transferred the parasite to another plant. And maybe this whole time on this property, I've been spreading disease around, and that's part of why the plants are struggling. And so there's another level of insanity there of I'm taking the best approach I can to address what I clearly see as an illness in these plants, but I don't know what I'm fighting, and I don't know how to fight it most effectively. So the final thing I'll say is, obviously what I'm doing here today is basically futile. You have to just assume that this is a futile effort because it's unlikely that I can eradicate this disease from this single little pine tree, and certainly I'm not going to succeed in eradicating it from every tree on this property. And given that as the case, given that I can't even attempt to get to every pine needle on the larger trees where the branches are so high and out of my reach, so it's totally a futile attempt. So that leads us to the question of what can actually be done. We see that my efforts to live in harmony with my environment, to consume a proportionate and reasonable amount of resources, I can't do that enough to offset the effects of people who are living completely disproportionate lives of consumption, who are consuming, the vast resources that they are. So me conserving resources, me recycling, me driving a fuel-efficient car, there's nothing I can do as an individual making lifestyle choices that will offset the destruction being caused by people who just don't give a damn and have the amount of money to live the lives that they're living. So what can I do to actually make a difference? And my answer to that question, and I share this because it may be valuable for others, is we need community connectedness. We need people to be connected to other people, to experience empathy and sympathy for other human beings. And we need people to be nourished in that form of basic connection with other human beings so that they don't feel this weird compulsion to try and fill the hole in their soul with a bunch of consumer goods. I mean, I would like nothing more than to talk to some of these billionaires and help them find a way of existing, find deeply fulfilling things they could be doing with their lives so that they don't try and fulfill themselves by over-consuming the world around us. Because that's what's happening right now. They're basically trying to fill the void in their soul, in their, experience of just feeling unsatisfied with life, they're trying to fill that with consumption. Maybe if I build a bigger house, then I'll finally be happy. I'll feel like I accomplished something. Maybe if I buy a faster car, then I'll feel like I've accomplished something with my life. So there's this overconsumption in an attempt to fulfill the soul's needs, and the soul can never be fulfilled in the material world. The soul is fulfilled, or call it whatever you will, the emotional being, the psyche, put any name to it you want, but our inner world, our inner well-being is not nourished by consumer capitalism. We're not nourished by the material world because it's not the material part of our being. Our material being is nourished by food and water and touch and those sorts of things, physical things. Our inner world is nourished by connection, by meaningful conversation, by having a sense of belonging, by having a sense of purpose. And so in my community here, one of the things I'm doing is leading a weekly dance jam because I know that if I can help facilitate an experience for people where they get to make moment-to-moment decisions being connected to their own inner truth and letting that truth guide their dance, that they can also do that in their external day-to-day existence outside of the dance studio, and they can use that connection to their inner guidance system to guide them to meaningful connections with other people, to meaningful experiences, to work that is fulfilling and has a sense of purpose. And so that's just one thing that I can actually do. Plucking diseased pine needles off this tree is not going to slow down climate change. It just helps me address a little bit of my own anxiety around the health of my property, right? And doesn't even really do much for that because I know that this attempt is probably futile. 99% likelihood that this does nothing to save this tree. But what I can do is I can show up to my community in a way that's supportive. I can be a facilitator of experiences that helps people get really connected to themselves so that they go and make good decisions in their lives. And they, also make decisions out there where they're making a difference. And making a difference feels really satisfying. It's really fulfilling. It's really nourishing. It's the kind of thing that I'm sure Mackenzie Scott, as she gives away her money, she has a much more deeply nourished experience of life than the billionaires who hoard their money and use their wealth to influence the creation of laws so that they can gain even more wealth. Because again, wealth does nothing to nourish our inner reality. So that's kind of maybe the last thing I'll end on here is just a note of inspiration to think about what are the things you could do in your own life first to nourish yourself. Are there activities, groups of people you can connect with where you'll feel more nourished and thereby have more energy to maybe call your congressman or take direct action in the world to try and influence things for the good? And if you are able to do that, maybe then you feel enough energy to reach out to other people who also need connection and community and build that community. Whether that is based around an activity like hiking or whether that's based around activism and trying to help people in need, whatever it is, just building community is a huge thing, and it's the kind of thing that we're going to need as we go through the transition from an economy based on savage greed as the ultimate victory of success, going from that sort of economy to an economy that is actually based on success being defined by, maybe achieving enough wealth that you can give something to others. That it's not about what you can take, it's about what you can give. I mean, JFK, right? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? Because when we all do things for each other, everyone thrives. When we only do things for ourselves, some of us thrive and some of us barely survive. But we could live in a world where absolutely everyone has an amazing existence that is deeply fulfilling and rich and nourishing, and it could be so incredible. But it's got to start with shifting from an economy that values greed and hoarding towards an economy that values giving. So, anyhow, maybe start a local gift economy. See if you can get a gift exchange going where people give what they have to share and everyone benefits from that. Who knows? Tell you what, it's so depressing to see. I don't know, again, if the cameras picked it up, but on this branch in particular, there have been so many of these needles I've plucked, and I just watched this white dust fall down onto the plants below, which may then seed further organisms coming back and attacking this pine tree. I've definitely noticed this particular disease, pathogen, organism, whatever it is, starts at the bottom of the trees and then slowly works up towards the top, which is part of why I started at the top and working down, because I want to cut it off at the pass. And maybe these lower branches I'm going to ultimately trim off, but hopefully can keep the upper branches alive so this tree can continue to photosynthesize and grow and thrive. So, get out there, get connected, make sure you are doing things that actually nourish you, make sure you're connecting with people who are nourishing to you, and let's, do the things, in addition to insane little attempts like this to try and save a single tree, let's also take the actions that can change the foundational organizing principles of society so that we can create a world where everyone is thriving. That is so imminently possible. We just have to somehow break through to the billionaires and the control freaks and help them have experiences that are more nourishing and fulfilling so that they can make a choice between abject greed and domination and living a life where everyone thrives. All right, end diatribe for today. All right, y'all, so I finished taking all the diseased pine needles off that tree, and if I had a really good compost heap right now, I would put the pine needles in that heap and know that the heat of the compost would destroy whatever microorganism it is that's plaguing my trees. But I don't have that right now, so instead what I have is a cardboard box with some newspaper and some Coleman white gas on it. So hopefully, yeah, we knew that was going to catch pretty quick. So we're just going to burn these organisms in the background there. You can see choke cherries that are also being plagued by maybe the same microorganism that just looks different on choke cherry leaves than pine needles, or maybe it's being plagued by a whole different microorganism. I don't know. All I know is that my poor plants on this property are suffering from more and more disease. So we'll offer this fire up as a way of, trying to restore some balance. If this was, basically this ecosystem is a fire-adapted ecosystem. Historically, there would be lightning strikes, sparking little fires, and you'd have a patchwork of small fires that would come through the ecosystem and would ultimately also cleanse diseases like this out, right? I mean, I feel instinctively like I want a fire to sweep through this property and kill off all these plant diseases. I mean, right here behind me, this serviceberry bush has got some kind of blight attacking it. All the dogwoods on the property, they have something that's causing the leaves to wither and look unhealthy. And so really this property needs to be cleansed by a big fire. But obviously I don't want a big fire to sweep through my property. And so there's something that feels kind of right about trimming out some of these plants that are diseased and then burning them as a way to deal with the disease. So we'll see. Who knows if it's gonna work or not, but it feels like about all I can do at the moment. And we'll see if there's enough fuel there to burn through all the green needles. Yeah, so fire has always been used in cultures around the world as a form of prayer, an offering to the realm of spirit, the smoke representing the transition of physical material into the realm of spirit. So may this prayer be one of salvation for all of us, that we may break free of the entrenched patterns that keep us destroying our world instead of nurturing our world even as it nurtures us. So that's my prayer. May everyone be freed from entrenched patterns. May all beings be freed from suffering. And may this world thrive for millions of years to come. Love y'all. Alright, y'all, so I had my tiny little fire. The pine needles have been burned to ash. And now, because I don't actually want any uncontrolled fires on this property, we are going to put this completely out, making sure there are no smoldering coals or ashes whatsoever. No chance that a little wind could blow in here and stoke up a fire that would cause millions of dollars in damages to my neighbors' homes, not much less my own home. So yeah, that concludes this little episode, Parasites in Paradise, Chapter 1. I'll be talking more about this later, I'm sure, as I come back through sometime to deal with some of this other stuff. I mean, look at this plant. That doesn't look healthy. Trying to see if these dogwoods, yeah, you can see these guys right here. Those guys aren't doing well. Something is going on. We need to thin things out. But perhaps I'll end with one of my favorite wildflowers here. Look at these cute little guys. They are so cool. These little stalks of pink bells that grow in the shade underneath the trees. And look at that little baby tree right there. And this tree, I pulled off all of the diseased pine needles from it 2 weeks ago, and I'm happy to say it's looking good. I don't see any new parasite growth on this pine needle, so on this pine tree. So yeah, I'll be interested to check back in with the other pine tree here in a week, and then in 2 weeks see if I made a difference. But the fact that that pine tree does not have any new parasitic organisms on it, that's great. And maybe that gives us cause for hope that even the insanity of trying to stop climate change with a pair of tweezers, every little action maybe actually does make a difference, and we really can. I know for all that's impossible for me as one individual to stop climate change with a pair of tweezers and individual daily actions, there's no question that all of us together absolutely can still keep this planet as an intact ecosystem with thriving life everywhere. I mean, this just incredible, thriving jungle that I get to live in here that is so inspiring and fills me with such incredible life force because I'm just surrounded by all this living nature. We can all have this experience. We can have a planet that is green and lush and happy with clear, beautiful water to drink and clear blue skies, or we can have life in hell. It's up to us. It's up to us to work together. Climate change is the issue that has the potential to unite all of humanity and to bring us together to really fulfill our full potential as human beings. So in that sense, climate change may be the greatest gift that this planet's ever experienced, or that humanity has, because this is our chance to really fulfill our potential. Or not. We'll see. It's up to us. Get out there, make a difference, get connected. Love y'all. Bye.